Hi everybody, Alex here from Expert Forex, and in this video we're going to be looking at the daylight savings robot trading nightmare that many traders are totally unaware of, to their benefit. Now before I go on, I need to give this particular warning. Please do not watch this video if you are a robot trader and have or are prone to sleeping disorders, or you are a compulsive perfectionist. This video raises more questions than gives answers. Now, two things triggered this video, and the first one was I received this email yesterday, in fact, from a broker, FX Choice, as you can see, and it says, please be aware that daylight saving time ends in the US amongst other countries on Sunday the 7th of November. As a consequence, these markets will be opening and closing 1 hour later in server time. Then further down in the email they say, oh, by the way, server time is GMT +2 and moved from daylight saving time to standard time last week. So they're talking about times that change continuously, and the fact that they have moved their server time a week before, and that they are now giving a warning about future changes in the financial markets, shows you the minefield that robot traders in particular have to work through. The second thing that triggered it was a one-on-one session that I had with one of our traders who had spent tremendous time perfecting the exact time of day a certain EA would be used to trade the financial markets. Now the problem is all this perfect optimization and testing and all that happened in the last, let's say, month or so, and since that testing a lot of changes have happened in the market. London has changed its times of opening. New York, as you can see in the email, will be changing its time. The Asian market has already changed a few weeks ago. So there's a continuous changing of financial market opening and closing times all the time. Besides that, there's also the continuous changing of server times, where as you can see, brokers actually changing their server time. So we're chasing a moving target all the time. Now, what does all of this mean? So we have these traders that spend so much money on getting perfect data and big computers, and they set out and they optimize their EAs to the finest detail, and they get the most accurate settings relative to a particular time, let's say GMT, during this particular testing. But if you are testing, for instance, a year, you must realize there are 2 periods or even 3 or 4 periods where the data jumps around. New York changes its opening and closing times twice a year. London changes its opening and closing times twice a year. Sydney, for instance, changes its opening and closing time, and they all do it at different times. If they all did it at once, it'd be a lot easier, but it's very complicated. They do it at different times for different periods even. So that means that the London Stock Exchange relative to the New York Stock Exchange can vary by 2 hours twice a year over certain periods. And when you're doing this perfect backtesting, it's very difficult to imagine that you have taken those changes into account. Plus, another thing, the broker actually changes their server time. So you've got financial markets changing, the brokers changing, and the brokers might not change at the same time because you've got 3 major changes happening, but the broker will select which one is the most important one for them, and they'll change accordingly. So by the time you start trading live, you are totally confused. Okay, so firstly, let's have a look at where we can find information about all these daylight saving times, and also the differences between the various locations and the differences between GTM and the various cities. So Time and Date is the one website that I have been using for, I think, most probably 15, 16 years, because it supplies all the information that you would possibly want about time zones, daylight savings, and that type of thing, even weather, and it also has a lot of downloadable tools where you can load clocks onto your desktop and that kind of thing. So there's a lot on this website to do, and let's go and visit it. So here I am on the website, and if you want to have a look at daylight saving issues, you just go here to time zones, and it will give you details about daylight saving times in particular cities or regions. There's also daylight saving changes that can be seen here. I might as well just click on these. That doesn't tell us that much changes. You type in the city or country that you want to get details on, and it will give you that. And time differences, you type in a city, let's say Sydney, and it will give you the time differences of most of the major cities in the world, about 200 of them, but here are the major ones. 15-hour difference to New York, 11 hours. Now you see the difference there is 4. Pretty soon that difference is going to become 5. Tokyo, that's the difference. So it's actually a fantastic resource that you can look at. And what I use a lot is the International Meeting Planner, which I've mentioned in previous videos, where I have my own location and the location of the person I'm meeting with, and I can immediately see times that are that are convenient to both parties. And let's say London, for instance, show timetable, and the red is where people sleep, and you can then go between the two reds and say, all right, here's a window of opportunity to talk to somebody in London, that type of thing. You can see there's only most probably 6 hours or so where there's such a window between Sydney and London at the moment. Anyway, so that's where you can find the information that that you need for analyzing the situation of server times, financial market open times, and that type of thing. Now here are some extracts from that website, and I've basically looking at London, New York and Sydney here, and it gives the exact days when the daylight saving adjustments occur and when the next one will occur, and there we have it. And then if you look down here, New York gives the exact times and when the next one will occur, and then here's Sydney also there. And as you can see, in all cases they're all different. They use different days. You would think that the countries would coordinate and have daylight saving at the same time so the world is more orderly. So for instance, we have non-alignment between the major time zones, which is Asia, Europe and Northern America all the time. It's probably 6 times in the year there's some form of adjustment that happens. And here's, for instance, again, I've shown you these numbers change all the time. So the alignment between the major markets can be very difficult. So at least 2 months of the year, these markets are in constant change and misalignment. The other 10 months, they are fairly stable. Now, again, if you don't know how to find out your server time, it is shown on the Market Watch. You just open the Market Watch, and that is in fact your server time. If you then want to relate your server time to GTM, you just type in GTM in your Google search, and it will tell you. And for instance, here it's 11:30, and there it's 2:30. So in other words, my broker here that I'm using here, 8cap, is GTM plus 3, because if you add 3 to GTM, then you get to your 2 o'clock time. And you can see these are actually different days. That is just before midnight, and that's just after midnight, so it can be that complicated too. So what is the solution to all of this? Okay, if you are manual trading, no problem at all. Just trade the charts as you see them. So you don't have to worry about all of this nonsense if you're trading manually. But still be aware that the financial markets will open in different times, and therefore take that into account. If you're, for instance, trading the London Open, it could change from time to time during the year, especially if you're in Sydney, for instance. It will change by 2 hours twice a year. So be aware of that type of thing. But for robot traders, it is a nightmare. Firstly, what it means is that any set files that you use can only be regarded as guides. And I've always said that they should be regarded as guides, but this actually highlights the fact that any set file, even if you've done it on a broker in your time zone that uses a server in your time zone and everything is aligned, the set files will be problematic from time to time because the markets open in different times. So New York will open at a different time relative to Sydney. London will open at two different times relative to twice a year, and that type of thing. Make sure that you know the set file creation details. A lot of people just take set files from fellow traders or from even from us, and they don't know how they've been prepared. They just assume that these things, these fantastic set files, are going to make them very rich, and they just plug them into the EAs. So be very wary about set files. At best, take the set file and do some form of optimization for your local conditions. Please be very careful about the conclusions you reach. For instance, this one trader was doing this fantastic work. He actually had his times down to a 15-minute period. So he had optimized down to 15-minute periods, and he was trading crosses like the pound USD, which is, the pound represents London, the USD represents New York, and those numbers are changing continuously, so that the times that he had optimized will not work next week or next month. So very important, make sure that the conclusions that you reach are valid for the period that you're going to be trading. So the ideal thing is to actually, if you are going to be trading November this year, then optimize November last year, because then at least you comparing apples with apples, and don't do an optimization for the whole year up to November, because you're getting a mishmash of time adjustments coming through, and your conclusion might not be correct. And then, as I said in the warning, beware of going crazy in your search for perfection. If you sit down and try and work these things out and try and work out how to get the most perfect settings from time to time, it could drive you mad. And as the picture shows here, sometimes it is good to take the ostrich approach and just stick your head in the sand and pretend the problem does not exist. And to a large degree, I have done that, and it has kept me sane, because to try and adjust from week to week to week to week is just a nightmare when trading robots. So just do the major adjustments. Be aware of what you're trying to do. If you're trying to trade the US market, focus on the adjustments required for the US market. If you're trying to trade the UK market, focus on those adjustments for your robot. In all cases, take care of your sanity, because it will drive you mad if you try and align everything all the time. I hope that you've enjoyed this video and that I've made you aware of the nightmare that exists for robot traders because of daylight savings adjustments in the major trading markets. And I often giggle when people go through this perfectionistic approach to set file creation. So from me, Alex Deploy, sorry I can't give you any better news. I hope I haven't upset you excessively. Cheerio.